Good evening. I'm Haley Figosello, and this is Englebrook Independent News Federal Crime Rundown, where we examine some of the most significant federal criminal cases across the Northeast United States this month. From illegal re-entry and narcotic trafficking to major fraud schemes and child exploitation cases, federal prosecutors across New England and Mid-Atlantic continue to pursue crimes that impact communities across that region. Tonight, we break down major federal cases out of Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Delaware. Let's begin in Maine. Federal prosecutors in Maine announced several significant cases involving immigration violation, drug trafficking, child exploitation crimes. A Salvadorian national, Helmer Osman Gutzner, 43, was sentenced in the U.S. District Court in Bangor after authorities determined he had illegally re-entered the United States following prior deportation. Gutzner has been deported twice previously, once in 2008 from Miami and again in 2010 from Arizona. The case began in October 2025 when Farmington police stopped the vehicle for a traffic violation. A U.S. Border Patrol agent responded to assist officers determine Luxor lacked documentation to legally remain in the United States. Judge John A. Woodcock Jr. sentenced him to time served following several months of incarceration. In a separate case, South Portland resident Lionel Moultrie, 43, pled guilty to distributing cocaine after investigation with the Maine Drug Enforcement Agency conducted multiple undercover purchases. Court records show undercover agents bought cocaine from Moultrie at least 3 times in early of 2024, with transactions captured through surveillance and records evidence. Moultrie now faces up to 20 years in federal prison and potential $1 million in fines at sentencing. Meanwhile, Cody J. Morale, 33, of Gorham, received 25 years in federal prison sentence after investigation uncovered thousands of child sexual abuse images. Homeland Security investigation agents executed a search warrant in February of 2025, seizing multiple devices containing more than 5,000 illegal images. Merle has previously been convicted in state court for unlawful sexual conduct involving a minor. Federal prosecutors say he distributed illegal material through online messaging platform. He will serve 25 years in prison, followed by 15 years of supervised release, and must pay $105,000 in restitutions to the victims. Authorities are also pursuing charges against Devin Austin Bishop, 29, of Manchester, Connecticut, accused of assaulting a federal officer at Lubbock Port of Entry near the Canadian border. Investigators say Bishop sped across the bridge from Campbell Island, Canada, before resisting arrest and grabbing for a Customs and Border Protection officer's firearm during a struggle. The firearm discharged during the altercation, but no one was injured. Bishop faces up to 8 years in federal prison if convicted. In Vermont, federal prosecutors are seeking Mexican national David Daniel Corona Sanchez, who has been charged with illegal re-entry after deportation. Authorities say Corona Sanchez initially entered the United States near Eagle Pass, Texas in 2021. Before being deported in 2022. The investigation resurfaced after a DUI arrest in Mulberry, Vermont earlier this year. In March, ICE enforcement and removal operation agents attempted to apprehend him in South Burlington, triggering a vehicle pursuit and crashed along Dorset Street before he fled on foot. Federal agents later executed a search warrant at his residence but did not locate him. An active federal arrest warrant remains outstanding. A Dominican national, Robley Aldo de Jose Guano, 38, has been sentenced to 125 months in federal prison for illegally re-entering the United States and trafficking narcotics. Prosecutors say Guaraldo previously had been deported in 2021 after conviction in Massachusetts for identity theft and a child sexual offense. After returning illegally, he sold fentanyl and methamphetamine to a DEA cooperation source, including 121 grams of fentanyl and approximately 1 pound of methamphetamine. Federal prosecutors described the case as a clear example of a repeat offender trafficking deadly drugs in New England. In another New Hampshire case, Ariel Costello Solano, also a Dominican national, pled guilty to conspiracy to distribute methamphetamine. Investigators say he coordinated drug sales totaling more than 5 pounds of methamphetamine, as well as an additional shipment including cocaine and fentanyl. Authorities arrest him during a controlled delivery operation in Seabrook, New Hampshire. He faces up to 20 years in federal prison after sentencing scheduled of June of 2026. In Massachusetts, several major federal prosecutions highlight crimes ranging from child exploitation to tax fraud. A Lowell man, Stephen Esta Ramirez, 23, received 5 years in federal prison after authorities discovered more than 6,000 files of child sexual abuse material on his devices. Investigators found 700 videos on a USB drive and thousands of additional files on his phone. He will also face 5 years of supervised release following his prison term. Federal prosecutors also charged Sharatha Karanja, 56, with filing false tax returns tied to a scheme that allegedly concealed more than $3.5 million in company revenue. Authorities say the scheme resulted in approximately $980,000 in unpaid federal taxes. In a separate fraud case, former Veteran Affairs nursing assistant Whitney Frasco was sentenced to probation in order to pay restitution for fraudulently obtaining PPP pandemic relief loans using falsified tax documents. Another Massachusetts case involved Alden Welch Rome, charged with sending a threatening email stating that he would be happy if a victim were to attack him with an assault rifle. If convicted, Romo faces up to 5 years in federal prison. Federal prosecutors in Rhode Island secured several significant narcotics and exploitation convictions. Hector Gonzalez Michael, 35, was sentenced to 121 months in prison after trafficking more than 3 pounds of crystal methamphetamine. Investigators intercepted him outside a Boston residence carrying the drugs inside a cooler. Meanwhile, North Providence resident Larry W. Albo, 52, received 25 years in federal prison sentence for producing child pornography involving minor victims. The court also ordered lifetime supervised release and required Albo to register as a sex offender. Another defendant, Mark Durr, 32, was sentenced to 10 years in prison after federal agents seized approximately 655 grams of fentanyl during a search of his Providence home. Authorities say he attempted to flush narcotics down the toilet and escaped through a window before he was arrested. In Western New York, Kelvin Thomas, 43, pled guilty to sex trafficking conspiracy and drug trafficking charges. Prosecutors say Thomas participated in operations exploiting two individuals struggling with addiction, providing drugs in exchange for commercial sex acts, and helping arrange buyers through online advertisement. The charges carry a mandatory minimum of 5 years and a potential life sentence. Another case resulted in probation for Michael W. Lershon, who admitted lying under oath during a previously fraud trial. Investigators determined his testimony about being out of town during a key event was contradicted by cell phone photos and financial records placing him in Buffalo at the time. He must pay approximately $2 million in restitution. In Pittsburgh, Julian Thompson, 33, pled guilty after failing to surrender for a 10-year federal sentence and continued to distribute fentanyl and heroin while on the run. Authorities seized more than 250 bags of narcotics, a drum magazine, jewelry, and $65,900 in cash. Two Cambria County residents, Dustin Blow and Charles Templin, were also indicted on federal charges related to methamphetamine trafficking and firearm violations. Both men face a potential life sentence if convicted. In another case, a Dominican national, Santos Carasto Mota, received 8 years in federal prison for coordinating cocaine trafficking operations while already serving a state sentence. Investigators say he arranged kilogram-level cocaine deals from inside prison using coded language during a record phone call. Federal prosecutors in New Jersey secured a 43-month prison sentence for Georgia chiropractor Talif Karan, who orchestrated a $14.9 million healthcare fraud scheme. Authorities say Cameron and her co-conspirator submitted fraudulent Medicare claims for medically unnecessary orthopedic braces and genetic cancer tests while paying illegally kickbacks. Investigators determined Cameron personally received more than $1.3 million in proceeds from the scheme. In Connecticut, Adam C. Salgo Jr., 32, was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison for downloading and possessing child sexual abuse material using an encrypted messaging app, Telegram. The investigation began after reports from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children identified illegal files linked to his cloud storage account. In Bridgeport, Mikeem Prophet, 22, received 102 months in prison for participating in a series of violent armed robberies, including the robbery of an Amazon delivery truck. Victims were threatened at gunpoint and forced to the ground during the crimes. Another defendant, Ellie Samuel Ophelia Fernandez, was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison after supplying multiple kilograms of cocaine to a Connecticut drug trafficking network. Authorities seized firearms, narcotics, cash, and vehicles during the investigation. Finally, tonight in Delaware, Andrew Somerville, 55, was sentenced to 18 months in prison for fraudulently claiming COVID-19 employee retention credits. Authorities say the scheme generated more than $866,000 in fraudulent tax refunds, which Somerville used to purchase luxury items and distribute money to associates. In a separate case, Daniel Fernandez, 44 of Brooklyn, pled guilty after police discovered 10 kilograms of cocaine, 3 pounds of methamphetamine, and large quantities of heroin and fentanyl inside a vehicle stopped near Christina Mall. Fernandez faces up to 20 years in federal prison, while sentencing is scheduled for July of 2026. These cases represent only a portion of federal prosecutions underway across the Northeast, as federal agents continue to target drug trafficking networks, fraud schemes, violent crimes, and crimes against children. For continued coverage of federal investigations and major criminal cases across the region, stay with Englebrook Independent News. I'm Haley Figosello. Good night.